All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hope you guys are having an amazing evening. Our evening is just about to get better with today's session. I'm very excited myself, and we still have participants coming in. We're currently at 24. We have quite a few RSVPs, so we'll wait for a bit and then we'll start. All right. Good evening once again. Welcome, welcome, welcome to those just coming in. We'll be expecting quite a few participants today, but I'll just get started. Welcome once again to AI Study Jam Week 2025, proudly organized by GDOC MMU for the students. We're thrilled to have you join us on this exciting journey of learning and building with AI. Please take a moment to settle in, say hi in the chat. The chat is open, and get ready for an inspiring session ahead. I really am excited, as mentioned, for this session. And don't forget, this is just the beginning. Today is day one. We are pleased to announce that we have additional workshops, three more. We have tomorrow, then we're taking Wednesday off, then we have one on Thursday and Friday. So spread the word and let's make it a movement. All right. So before that, we're going to have a short interactive session, just a bit of an icebreaker. Let's go over a few housekeeping rules first. So firstly, participants, please stay muted when you're not speaking. Drop any questions you might have in the chat. And the session is being recorded. As you can see on the backdrop, that is our title over there. And we're just going to have a very short ice-breaking session with Slido. June, if you would please keep the question up. So you guys may scan the QR code on your screen right now, whereby you'll be asked a question and we can just answer it together. The question for today's session is, what word comes to mind when you think of context when it comes to AI conversations? NVIDIA, right. Memory, okay, all right. Gemini, right. Machine learning, hallucinations, all right. That can happen with AI models, definitely. AI, right. ChatGPT, DeepSeek, right. Now we're talking about AI models. Love that, love that. ChatGPT, wow, a popular one, as expected, of course. It is, I'd say, one of the most used models worldwide right now. Grok, all right. Now we're just name dropping AI models. Tokens limit, right? Yes, context that can definitely cost tokens, right? So we have quite a few interesting answers here, which is I think is amazing. We'll learn more about context today, and I will take this opportunity to introduce our honorable speaker today, who we are very excited on having. So I'm pleased to introduce today's speaker, Mr. Rendy Bambang Jr., a passionate data professional with over a decade of experience in data engineering, AI, analytics, and software engineering. Currently, Mr. Rendy is the VP of Data at Evermos and a big data lecturer at the Bandung Institute of Technology. His work spans leading data teams at companies like Ruangguru and Traveloka. That is not all, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Randy is also a dedicated mentor and a content creator. Yes, you can find his YouTube channel where he shares his expertise about AI and data practices. His YouTube channel is called Insinuate Data. And you can also look into his upcoming book, Practice DBT. So today, Mr. Randy will be talking to us about Gemini chatbot memory using LangChain, where we will learn about context caching with the Gemini API. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Randy Bambang Jr. once again. Mr. Randy, welcome. The stage is yours.
Thank you, thank you. Is my sound is okay?
Yep, we
It's
can
coming
hear you
out.
loud and clear.
Awesome,
Yep.
awesome. So yeah, good evening, guys. It's very I really great to join this conversation. This is actually the shirt that I get from the Dev Fest in Kuala Lumpur last year. So
Yes, yes.
I really enjoy my time in Malaysia. I mean, like we are very close relatives, right? In many aspects. So yeah, it's very enjoyable to meet you guys. So we'll talk more about context here. So it's very interesting interactive session there. There are, Gemini, ChatGPT, also NVIDIA is coming out there, Grok, everything. So it's very exciting, right? Nowadays, talking about AI. But I think it's very important for us, especially the one that actually in the technology area, to understand how to leverage this technology and also how to build things. There is one interesting discussion in YouTube that I've listened to. It's coming from a channel called the Daily Diary of the CEO. If you have
Mhm.
heard about it, and they're talking about something very interesting. So in this AI age, there will be a lot of shift in economy. The one who can utilize the AI will become, the breadwinner in that economy because uh, people are changing things. How we interact with apps might be really different, right? In like probably 2 years, 3 years, or 5 years from now, the one that able to implement this correctly and fluently will be the winner. So I think that's why I'm here. That's why I'm also passionate to share this with you guys. And there's actually a bit of snafu in terms of like in the theme of the talk. First, I would like to talk about the context caching, but when I see the materials, it's not that interesting in a sense that context caching in a specific sense is more on the cost optimization front. So I switch a bit the talk to talk more about the memory inside the chatbot, right? So let me just share my screen. I hope that's fine, Sayan.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, awesome. So the flow of the talk, we'll start with some, understanding first in terms of like what are the memory, etc., etc., and then I was I would like to share a Google Colab with you guys, so you guys also can try to fiddle around with the scripts. So, okay, Gemini AI chatbot with memory using LangChain. Um, okay, this is the introduction. You already heard about it. I brought my family last year. It was fun. Okay, so this all AI hype is very interesting because when new technology comes, usually it comes with a hype, and we as a technology person become more wary about it. Like, is it really only a hype or what? Right. So, what interesting is there are some analysis that the adoption of internet back then during the dot-com bubble in the 2000s, it takes 23 years since the internet is founded until it reaches 90% of the users. but it takes only 3 years for AI to become adopted by 90% of the users. This is very, very interesting because it means that the value is real and the adoption is ubiquitous anywhere. And also, this is a very interesting chart. This is how work will evolve like going forward, right? In this chart, you can see that probably the plain IT jobs will decrease about 9%, but the AI related jobs is kind of like quadrupled. And this is also quite interesting. The adoption of the AI is very fast in terms of like adoption in the companies. And I would like to ask you guys, please guess what's the most common of AI adoption in industry. Just guess it. You can. I think you can put in the chat, right, Sayan?
Yes, we can.
Okay, okay. I would like to invite you guys to also discuss this. Just guess. Oh, there's a QA feature. Awesome. Right. So you can add more questions there. Okay. Please put in the chat what's your guess. Okay, chatbot. Awesome. Another thing. Anyone else? What are the most common AI adoptions in the industry? What usually companies started with when they adopt AI? Content writer, customer service. Interesting. Prediction, right? Hiring processes, awesome. Okay, let's continue. Yeah. So interestingly, one of the research says that the most common AI adoption is actually code generation. Probably it's because tech people adopt AI a lot more. It's kind of like native to them. But in the most interesting one, the second one is actually super chatbot, right? So it becomes like the mostly wide adapted AI use case in the industry right now, right? And we would like to focus here because yeah, code generation is more about like having a good LLM that can generate codes and just plug into your favorite code editor, or even change to the new way code editor, right? Like Windsurf and everything. But super chatbots, it require more implementation there, right? Let's start with a simple chat. Just play around with a use case. I have one simple use case here. So I recently have an interest on photography. So I am a father of two, and I would like to capture more memories from my kids. So I ask the chatbot. I have two candidates. One is camera from Sony, one is from Canon. I asked them. So help me to compare. Is it better to pick this type of camera or this type of camera for photography? And as usual, Gemini can answer the question easily, right? With the context that it has. But what's more interesting is I think it's very common for you guys to do this. Is then you would like to rewind the answer, right? So I ask the chatbot here. Okay, I don't think I am. I think I'm lazy enough to just read all the narrative description. I would like to see it in table, right? So I can compare based on my use case for each of the options, which one actually the winner, right? So it's very common. So you ask something and you think, oh, okay, I think I haven't been that specific, and I would like to refine my prompt. That's very common. And this is actually a very common process, which is called prompt iteration. So first you kind of like create a prompt, have initial results, you refine the prompt, and then you further refine, etc., until you get the result that you need. And that requires memory. Why? Because it actually gets the data from the previous conversation that you've had. So for example, the conversation here where I ask made it a table comparison, if the chatbot somehow doesn't have memory at all, it will be confused. What table comparison are you asking me to create, right? And because it has a memory, it can look up to the history of the chat. Oh, so you want me to compare in terms of table for these two type of camera, right? So that's memory. And this is an example of chat with conversational memory and without conversational memory. Because without conversational memory, if you see on the right bottom of the slides, it says, okay, interesting. What was it I wanted to know about again? Sorry, I have no idea because it has no memory at all. It just receive your prompt and then you get the answer, but it doesn't have any memory. And this is what you do if you just use the API. In any API, OpenAI API, Gemini API, Cloudy API, if you only ask one prompt and just that, it will be confused, right? So that's why it's very important for us to understand how to implement memory in a chatbot, right? So memory is a cognitive function that allows chatbot to store, retrieve, and use information to understand the present and the future. Blah, blah, blah. This is a very complex definition, but I think you understand what I mean, right? So, but how? Generally, we need to store the previous memory somewhere, somehow. That's the idea, right? I think everyone here might get the idea. Okay, I need to store it, but how? What are the techniques? What can I use, and what are the considerations? Right. So that's what we will talk about today. The first is there is a method called window memory. So one of the ways to do this is we just keep the last n messages. And in this case, for example, the n is equals to 3. So we only retain the last 3 message. Why would like to do that? Why don't just all the message become all the context for the AI? It's because it's too big. It's because it's too expensive. So we need to pick which one actually would like to be the context, right? And in this example, if you are using a technique called window memory, then you would like to take the last n messages, and in this n, you might want to play around what actually the numbers better for your use case. Like for example, if it's heavy context use case, then maybe you would like the number to be higher, but you also need to see what actually the cost that you have in the budget, so that it still stays makes sense, right? In terms of like the trade-off cost and performance ratio. And what are the other method? Another method is just to summarize everything into one summary. That's also one possibility, right? So every time we talk with the AI, we then summarize the history somewhere, and then we use the summary in order to be a context for our next conversation. That's also one way to do it. And using the summary, you will be able to have context from all the previous messages into one summary. But beware, it might still get a lot more, or there are some details that is missing because it's getting summarized from a lot of conversations, right? And what if I would like to combine both? That's also possible. One technique is called summary and buffer memory, you know, because we would like to have last n token to be a history of the context, and then we would like to summarize the rest. That's one possibility, to have a granular detail of the recent conversation meanwhile summarizing the past conversations. So this is also one technique that we can use, right? So to summarize, there are 3 simple implementations for memory management. First, we would like to have just a window, simple window. We take, for example, last 3 messages as the context. We put it in the prompt as part of the prompt, and then we get the result along with the most recent prompt that we give to the AI. And the second is we summarize. We summarize all the history into one summary, right, into one text, and then we use the summary as part of the context. And another method is to combine both, so best of both worlds. We have summary for all the past conversation that we had, but we also use filter for the most recent conversation to make it more granular, right? So everything needs to be tried out, which one works, which one doesn't, and we need to also have a tracking in terms of like how many tokens that are being used, because in terms of API for AI LLM, we will be paying based on the token that we give, right? So the less token that we have, the cheaper it becomes, and the more token that we have, the more accurate, but also the more expensive it is, right? So this is one illustration. If you have buffer memory and you have too many tokens, that it might get token limit and it won't be good for you, right? But if you keep the buffer window memory, like for example, k equals to 12 means last 12 message, then it will, stabilize after a while. It will still increase, but it will stabilize. Even better if you summarize, right? Or even lower if you put the number of window lower as well. For example, 6, right? This kind of memory and token usage needs to be monitored, so you can see what are the patterns for the use case, and also whether the accuracy is actually suffer or not, right? So those are things about the technical in terms of like memory and what are the things that we need to consider, right? So you might be wondering like, okay, this is AI study jam. Why are we listening? And on and on. So let's just jump to the code, right? And in this code, we'd like to use a library called LangChain. This LangChain library is a very prominent library for AI. It has been around for, I think, 3 or 4 years. I've been using this for 4 years now, and there are a lot of features here. And this is actually the beginning of agent. If you think of, if you know the terms about agent, right? Reasoning agent, because in LangChain you can also have the AI to think, to reason, even before the OpenAI or Gemini release reasoning models. So the model can ask himself or itself, right, and think about it and then answer the question. And also LangChain expand its library to also handle memory. So we'll take a look at that. I will copy paste the link to the collab to the chat, right? Okay, here you go. Awesome. I saw thumbs up already, so awesome. I already shared to public, I guess. Okay, it's already shared to public. So right, I think we can just play around with it, right? So this Python collab notebook, I created this just for you guys specifically, of course, with the help of AI. That's why it becomes a lot faster, right? So I would like to explain it step by step to you, so you can run on your own, of course, with the instruction that has been copy pasted by Chanjun Kit in the chat columns, right? So for the first cell, I think it's very clear that it is trying to kind of like get a Google API key. It is a very it is a best practice to put your key in the keychain logo in the left of your screen. Why? Because exposing your key in your code is not wise. When you share your collab, then people can use also your API key, and you might get surprised the huge bill you get in the end of the month, right? So it's very important for you to put your key in the key code here, and also name the secret as Google underscore API underscore key all caps. After you put your API key there, then you can start to run the code, right? So the first one will take quite a while. It will install LangChain, Google Generative AI, and TikToken. Keep in mind, TikToken here doesn't mean we will record a TikTok session here and we will all dance. No, this TikToken library is actually made for us in order to calculate how many tokens that might get used in the AI, right? So it's very important because if you see all the pricing for the LLM, then it will tell you how many tokens and then how many dollars. But what actually token means, right? Is it syllables? Is it character? No, it's just how AI split the words, right? So it's very important for us to know the estimate, and one of the use cases actually to use this Tectocan library. Right after it is getting installed, we import all the classes or functions that we need. If you see here, you can already see there are several type of memory: conversation buffer memory, conversation summary memory, conversation buffer window memory, and then the combination of both summary buffer memory, right? So we'll just run to import and then configure the Gen AI library with the Google API key, and then we declare the class. So this is very interesting. So normally in LangChain, you don't have to create a wrapper for your LLM. But since I am using API key from Google AI Studio, then I need to create a simple wrapper for the LLM. So if you use Vertex AI, the enterprise grade type of Gemini, then you don't need to do this. You just use the Gemini LLM from LangChain. But since I'm using Google AI Studio, then I need to wrap it a bit. So this is the template for the conversation, right? This is following conversation between a human and AI assistant. And then you get history here as a context. So you put history as the prompt, and then the human input, and then the AI becomes the prompt. And we expect the AI to then input this dot, dot, dot here, right? As the answer. This is the prompt template that we would like to use. And in this prompt template, we have a history and input as a variable as being templated here. And then we also have a function run chat. So this is basically a simple wrapper to run a simple chat. And the chat is actually hard-coded here. If you see here, the first question is, hey there, how are you? Who are you? And we should expect the AI to answer who it is, right? I am AI, etc., etc. And then I ask the AI, can you tell me the joke, right? And then in order to test whether the memory is actually being recalled or not, then I ask, can you remind me what I asked earlier? Right? So this run chat will be a wrapper for us to test all the different memory library easily. So we just, pass the memory into the function and also put some description probably for the logs. But the important one here is we pass different memory into the function in order to get different responses, right? So I hope that's clear. We will continue into trying out a buffer memory. So buffer memory in LangChain is actually a full history. So this is the one that actually will get into the sailing of this graph. This is conversation buffer memory. So this put all the history as part of the prompt, and at certain point of time, then you will hit the sailing, right? And when you hit the sailing, it will become just error, and it's not really a fun user experience, right? And you don't see that with Gemini or ChatGPT, right? It's just like give up because there are too many conversation. You talk a lot about your girlfriend or boyfriend, right? And it's you give up, right? So it's not fun. So this conversation buffer memory is the simplest one, right? So if we run this conversation buffer memory, keep in mind I print several things here. First, I print the chat, right? So this is the answer from the AI. Remember, we ask who is who are you, right? And the AI answer, I am a large language model trained by Google because it's Gemini. And I asked the AI to tell the jokes, if you remember. And the AI tell me that why don't scientists trust atoms? Because they make up everything. Okay, that's a bit dry and a bit nerdy, but that's one of the joke that it comes up with. But the thing here is I would like to show you the conversation summary content. Here you can see, okay, this content is, hi there, who are you, right? I am a large language model, trained Google. Can you tell me the joke? So every chat is being stored in the memory, right? So this is also very interesting. For example, if you have a Kubernetes setup in your production, it will store in memory. And if you somehow run robin the request into different pod with different memory, then it won't get the memory because it's in memory buffer, right? I hope that makes sense. We'll also talk more about how to store it in DB, but keep in mind this is in memory. Right? So the last question is, can you remind me what I asked earlier? And then the AI answered, you asked me to tell you a joke. This means the memory works, right? Hooray! This is okay. I think I should put the one without memory, yeah, because it shows you that when the AI doesn't have the context. But this means like the AI have the context. You asked me to tell you a joke, right? And how about summary memory? Let's run this one. And in this one, we'll get the similar answer, and right. And this is actually the content of the conversation summary in the memory. So this conversation summary doesn't store memory in terms of like history of chat, but instead it actually summarizes the history into a paragraph, right? This is actually quite verbose. Like the human asks the AI who it is, the AI responds it is a language model, blah blah blah, and also the AI tells the joke, right? So it's kind of like, I don't think it's a summary. Probably it's a rephrase, right? Probably if we have a longer conversation, that we might see a real summary here. But you get the idea, right? It's not really a history. It's no longer a history, but it's more of a summary, narrative summary. And just to answer my curiosity, okay, this is summarization on how we get the summary in the first place, right? So I try to dig the code a bit deeper, and I get this variable summary memory prompt template, and this is actually the prompt that we give to the AI in order to get the summary that we see above, right? This is the prompt. Progressively summarize the lines conversation provided, adding onto the previous summary, right? Returning blah blah blah, right? Returning a new summary. So this is the example. Current summary, blah blah blah, new lines of conversation, new summary. And this is the current summary. This is the variable that will be replaced, but the real value. What is the current summary, and what are the new lines, and then what are the new summary? Okay, so that's how the summary comes in the first place. Of course, the summarization itself is the process that will incur cost. Bear in mind, right? Because it will do summarization uh, for your conversation and get a summary and then use it as a context. But in the long term, it's actually should be cheaper because compared to using all the history that you have, the conversation that might be super long, summary would help us to have a context that probably shorter, right? You might want to play around as well with the summarization prompt because it's also replaceable. Probably you would like, okay, maximum 10 sentences, maximum 5 sentences. That's also one thing that you can play around with the summary prompt, right? And what is interesting when I dig deeper into this LangChain library, the summarization doesn't happen for each of the chat. So there is a kind of like, I'll jump a bit to the slides. Kind of like a way or a consideration when to actually write the summary of the chat. And I haven't seen the configuration yet, but I think this should give you an idea on when the memory is being updated. One way to do it is to update the memory for every chat, right? That what happens if you put history. You just append the history and append again. But in summarization, if you summarize for each of the memory, then it might be expensive. So there might be some ways in order for us to summarize the past messages in background, like 30 minutes later or so. And this is what happened with LangChain. So interestingly, when I tested the summary, it doesn't comes out right away. So it kind of like wait, or probably there's limit to some how many history messages that happens above, etc., etc. But it's actually happen in background, and I think it's smart because it's optimized the cost that you would have when you are asking for summary for your context, for your memory, right? So go back to the code. Let's see the combination of the buffer memory and the window memory. Sorry, and summary memory. Okay, this is actually buffer summary, right? And when we are using the buffer summary, right, this will summarize, and this will also put some kind of like several messages, last messages. So you see here there is like the several messages, and there is also summary, and still there I get the context, right? Okay. Oh wait, sorry. This one is actually the buffer window memory. So the only last end messages. So this is actually the correct one, right? So the lower one is actually the one that is combined with the summary, right? Here you can see that this actually has a max token limit parameter that will decide if the history needs to go to the summary or not, right? And you see here there are some verbose code about tokenizer and everything, because the code will actually predict how many token that we have right now, right? And in order to make it cheap, we don't ask OpenAI or Gemini to know how many tokens that we have right now, and instead we calculate it right away using the library in our local, right? Okay. Before we go to the database one, any questions?
Any question, guys? If you guys have any questions at all, please feel free to put it in the chat. I would actually like to ask a question, if that's okay, Mr. Andy.
Sure.
Since you're talking about memory here, so if memory becomes, it's possible for the memory to become too large, right? That is a
Right.
possibility over the long term. So would storing it in a database, in that case, would that be more cost effective?
Right. This is a very good question. So, storing in database is actually one way to have a long memory, but still, when we put it as a context to the prompt, it still become expensive. So even if you put a lot of context in the database, then you'll need to still consider how many tokens that would like to ask for each of the chat, and how many chats that actually happens in one conversation in average, and how much you would like to cost your users to pay your service, for example, and see the ROI there, if that makes sense. So in the end, database will help you to store the data in every way you want, because it's cheap, right? And it's should stay forever compared to memory. But in the end, you need to also consider the cost when you pick the memory and then put it into the prompt, into the AI.
Understood, Ms. Randy. So if I catch that correctly, what you're saying is that even though we could minimize the tokenization in terms of it recalling its memory, we are giving it more information when we retrieve it from the database. So we have to balance those things.
Correct.
Understood. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so while waiting for questions, we'll just go ahead. Yeah, just type
Yep.
your
Go ahead.
question when you have
Mhm.
one. Right. So the last code here is actually trying to write the memory into a database. So I'm using SQLite here because, as you know, SQLite is a file-based database. So we'll just create a database right in this collab itself, and using the collab file access here in order to create the files. And I called the file memory DB. If you don't have the file, you run this code, it won't be error because the connect here will create the file for you, and it will store the file somewhere here in the folder icon, right? So if you would like to have the file to be, a long term, then I suggest you change the implementation into Google Drive or the real database. But this is for just demonstration purpose. So the first script, you would like to create a table, and in this table, you have a simple three-column table. First one is session ID. So we would like to have, of course, an ID for each of the session of the conversation. This will equivalent to the conversation in the left column in your Gemini, where it kind of like have a summary on what you're talking about, right? So this session is very important to you, for you to kind of like have a different memory for each, because one memory for one user is just too much, right? Granted, there should be user here. I think that's one thing that's missing, but I think that's fine. Let's just assume we have only one user, which is you, right? And the role here will be like AI, human, which who actually talks here, right? Is it AI or human? And the content, of course, the content of the chat itself. And in this case, like for example, we have a session 1 to 3. This is just one simple value, and you have a user here talking hello, right? And then you can fetch the data. This is just for inserting and then try to kind of like get the data from the database to test whether the database works or not, right? And after we test and it comes with the data that we just inserted from to the table, then we try to implement a message history implementation. So this is one specific implementation of chat message history. And in this example, we have a connect, we have an insertable, but the one that's important is actually the one that has add property here. So this message one. So this is how you will retrieve the message from the SQL. And this is actually how you kind of like add the message into the SQL, right? And the clear here shouldn't be used right now, but the most important one here is the retrieval of the message using the select query here and the insert of the message, right? And we just run it to execute the declaration. And when we kind of like use the conversation buffer memory, for example, instead of using memory as your storage for your memory, if that makes sense, the random access memory for as the storage for your chatbot memory, then you can use this history, which is actually an SQLite chat message history. So every messages here will be stored to a database, and for each of the time of the conversation, since we are using conversation buffer memory, then it will retrieve all the conversations from the database and then use it as a context, right? So this is one example. So we run the chat, right? And then it still get the context. Right, this one will also try to retrieve the history. And if you see here in the table, besides the one testing row that we put there, we also get the whole conversation of this demo under dash session, right? So that's all for the scripts. Any question? Oh, could you simply summarize things you shared until now? Thank you. Right. So if I would like to summarize what I explained here, in order to implement chatbot memory, you would like to decide first whether you would like to use the end last message approach, right? Or you would like to use the summarization approach, or you would like to combine both. Basically, this is a trade-off between richness of the context versus the cost that will be incurred. The more context that you have, the better, but also that's more expensive. The less context that you have, the cheaper, and you might want to use summarization in order to optimize the richness of the context, right? That's the summary of the talk. And after you kind of like decide the implementation, you can pick one of the AI library out there in order for you in order to help you to implement this memory. Because if you implement by yourself, then there will be quite a lot of bootstrapping, right? But if you just use the script that I've just given, so it will be a lot simpler. You just create a memory that you want, like for example, conversation server memory, put some parameters that you would like to have, and then you just go. This to a simple line of code, if you would like to simplify, is the key of this conversation. I hope that's helped, Justin. Right. So, Lucian, sorry, but I still not quite understand between buffer memory and buffer window memory. Would you mind to explain it again? Very good question. So basically, buffer and buffer window is very simple. If you use buffer window, then if you use buffer memory, then you will use the whole history of the chat. So full history, as I said here in the code. And if you use the window memory, right, then it will only take last n messages. Like for example, if I take 2, then it will only take the last 2 messages. So why would like to take the last 2 messages only? Because if we would like to take all the history, then it will be too much for us in terms of like context, because everything will go into the prompt along with the most recent prompt that we asked to the AI, right? And we don't want that. We would like it to be cost effective, and one of the ways is to just use the last 2 messages in the conversation with the AI. Is that clear, Lucian? Awesome. Okay, let's continue to the slide. I think there's only a few slides left here. Okay, I think I mistakenly closed the... Okay. Right? So when to use which? Okay, this is the summary, and this is actually summarize the questions that you had. First, if you use conversation buffer memory, it's simple, intuitive, but you can quickly reach token limits because everything's being stored and everything's being used. Conversation summary memory, efficient for long conversation, but relies heavily on summarization quality. There might be some details that been missing out because it's being summarized, right? And when you use buffer window memory, it's good for recent context, but forgets older interactions. And you can get the best of both worlds using the conversation summary buffer memory, which is balancing between recent and distant context, but requires careful tuning. And this tuning is the max token that we talk about, how many tokens that we would like to store for the historical and summarize the rest. Right. Is it that? No, actually. So there is a memory that we haven't touched yet for now, and I don't think it's enough for this talk. This actually talking about short-term versus long-term memory. So if you see the recent Gemini and ChatGPT actually store long-term memory for you. It tries to understand who you are, and when it gets context from the conversation, it actually store it somewhere. So for example, I said to the AI previously, I would like to have a good photograph camera because I would like to record moments with my kids, right? And at that time, the AI knows that I have kids. I am a dad, right? And it can be stored somewhere as a long-term memory, right? So just for example, Sayan, for example. Sorry, what major are you from, Sayan?
Data science.
Data science, awesome. So from data science major, right? And it will comes into my long-term memory that science is coming from data science major. And when I talk to Sayan later on, then I can talk, oh, Sayan, how's your college day. How are the scores? Have you learned about big data, something like that, right? So I know I can talk about that to Sayan because I know Sayan is from data science major, right? So that is from the long-term memory, and it can be stored per user, for example. So you can store memory for each of the users smartly somewhere. So then the chatbot have a context about what should be talked about. And this is very important, especially for some use cases, for example, customer service. It's very painful for us to kind of like tell more about our context again and again to different person. That's one of the pain points of having a human customer service. But if we have an AI customer service, then it can store the context somewhere, and then the next session or the next complaint that you have, then the AI will have context about you. That's the long-term memory. And how to implement that? Just to give you some ideas, you can use the summarization. That's one. So for each of the conversation that you deemed is worth storing, then you can summarize it into one huge memory. Another example is to use RAG or a retrieval augmented generation. So you put all of the memories separately in terms of like database, but in embedding format. So for each of the question, you can query the database and get the context about that user using the embedding algorithm, and it will get semantic context about you. So there are a lot of things that you can do, but it's like few methods that I can mention right now. Right. So I think that's all for the talk tonight. Oh, this is for the example, right? So sorry, I forget about this slide. This is the example. So you have old profile like name Tom, age none, friends Bob, and turns out during the conversation we find out that also Tom actually friend with Joe as well. So we add Joe to the array. That's one of the possibility, yeah, for just giving you the idea of this long term memory. All right, that's where to write. This is the reference. So I think that's all. Thank you. I'll give it to Sayan probably for more Q&A sessions if there is any.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Randy. That was very insightful. So we did have some questions just now in the chat, though some
Hmm.
people might be shy. So we are going to open another Slido session, a Q&A session, for people to ask any questions they might have from you anonymously. These can be questions related to the industry, right, Mr. Randy? Hope you're okay
Yes,
with
of
that.
course.
Yep. And also questions related to the talk in general. Again, this is anonymous, so just scan the QR code, or and what you can also do is click on the link in the chat and you can ask any questions you want. The link is in the chat now. There we go. All right. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Our first question is in. What are some limitations of the memory concept is in LLMs that developers should be aware of besides the cost, Mr. Randy?
Right. Very interesting. So, beside the cost, so actually, what I can think of is not limitation, more into even what's possible. So, if you remember, when GPT models open their API, they have like very limited context. I think it's like 4,000 context, sorry, tokens, 4,000 prompt, 4,000 tokens per prompt, and then increase to 8,000. But out of nowhere, Gemini come out with 2 million tokens for context, right? So it's like mind blowing. So probably one the possibilities actually, if you have unlimited cost, uh, in some sense, right? So you can have a very huge memory being put into the discussion, and then comes up with a pretty decent answer based on those very granular history of conversation. But beside that, the limitation that I can think of is more into, mm, all right, probably speed. So the more memory that you put into the prompt, the slower also it comes out with the answer. It's not really like a huge margin, but that's also one thing that you need to consider.
Understood, Mr. Andy. So what you're
Mm.
saying is that that could affect latency, essentially. Memory could affect latency in the long run. Right.
Right.
Very interesting. We have another question. How do we balance personalization to memory with user privacy and data protection? Right.
It's very interesting question. Oh, sensitive. So when we talk about personalization, it actually doesn't restrictly talking about AI, right? I mean, just a simple e-commerce or probably Netflix personalization also applies with user privacy. If, for example, I like horror movies, I don't want Cheyenne to know that I like horror movies, right? And there are a lot of compliance around that, like GDPR, PDPA, everything. And Gen AI is just adding one type of data into the bigger picture. So this conversation data, how do we store? This memory data, how do we store? But the same rules apply. How we store the memory data needs to be the same as the way we store a lot of confidential data, like birthplace, birth date, for example. If somehow the service requires us to store that, right? So it still applies. But one interesting here is we must assume all the conversation is private, right? So that's how we should approach the problem, and each of the conversation is to be stored as if we have a kind of like sensitive data inside.
Understood, Mr. Andy. So that's really up to the, I would say, the provider of the service, right? What you just mentioned.
Correct, correct. So there's one complexity here, Cyan, actually. So when we talk about AI, we also talk about the API that we are using for the AI, right? Like Gemini API, OpenAI API. That's one thing that we need to see whether they actually comply to those standards or not in legal terms, right? Whether, oh, this is actually GDPR compliance, this is a PDPA compliance, etc., etc. But we need to also see whether the company has interest to actually store the data in a private manner, right?
Mm,
Whether actually privacy come as their top of mind or not. So that's also one thing that we need to consider. Yeah,
understood.
the best option actually to host your own LLM, but it's come with cost, right? If you don't have scale, then it won't be make sense.
Definitely understood. Yeah, the cost can go insane from what I've seen. I saw someone, Mr. Andy, I don't know if you've seen, I saw someone having like six, those Mac Studios, stacking
Hmm.
Mac Studios to actually host DeepSeek. Was quite surprised
Yeah,
to see that.
interesting.
Yeah, they were hosting DeepSeek locally. All right. Next question. We have quite a few here. We have, what skills should we as modern data professionals develop to stay ahead as AI agents become more capable in handling data tasks even faster?
Right. Very interesting questions, right? This is actually an existential threat for me as well. How will I feed my kids, right? Because this is a very real problem, especially for you guys in academic world. Because eventually you'll go into the real world where you face the industry, probably as entrepreneur or as employee, and this is a real question that you need to answer, right? So how to stay ahead as AI agents become more capable handling data tasks even faster. So, in my prediction, this is my personal opinion, by the way. Going forward, the role of data will become merged into one from a lot of roles, like data engineers, data analysts, data scientists, etc. Right? So, uh, why there is no specialization? Because AI makes it easier for each of the roles. Like that's one thing, one way to think about it. And how to stay ahead? There are two ways. First, to think AI agents as your companion, right? Because in the end of the day, the one who use AI will walk faster, and everyone will choose him or her because he walk faster. Just as simple as that, right? And another way to address this problem, the second one, is actually to really become the forefront of the AI. What I mean by that is really understand how LLM works, really understand how to implement those LLMs, because as data professional, this is actually quite interesting. We will we will be regarded as someone who is expert in AI, even though we are data engineers or data analysts. So everyone in the company will ask, okay, how do we onboard this AI? But I am a data engineer, right? So
Yes.
as a data quote unquote person, you need to understand how to implement RAG, how to use this memory, right? How to do prompt correctly. For example, you'll be regarded as the AI expert in the company. So it's very important for you to understand the AI world, how to use it and utilize it, and what are the concerns. Like for example, that's very good question. How to make the AI solution secure? That's one of the most common question for enterprises, right? So again, I summarize the answer to the question. The first is, of course, to use AI as your tool, and second is to learn about how to implement the AI correctly.
Understood. Understood. All right. We have a few more questions if you don't mind, Mr. Andy.
Sure, sure, definitely.
All
Go ahead.
right. What role in the industry benefit most from knowing how to use LangChain memory? Right.
Awesome. So basically, the one who implements chatbot, right? It can be software engineers, it can be data engineers who somehow forced to be a software engineers because they expertise, right? So um, um, basically, those are the people that will benefit the most. Of course, product managers will also benefit because if you are a product manager, you need to know how to implement the product just in the surface level of understanding. Oh, there's this kind of memory and there's this limitation, because if you don't know the limitation, then you will ask, remember everything, make it cheaper, right? So like,
Yeah.
oh, how to remember everything and make it cheaper at the same time doesn't make sense at all. So when you know a simple implementation, just a very simple implementation, and what are the options, then it will help you to design a better product, and design the pricing probably for the product, design how to kind of like a user experience complements with the limitation of the technology, etc., etc. So software engineers, probably like machine learning engineers or data engineers, and of course product managers.
Understood. That is a wide array of applications. I did not think of product managers, but that's actually a very interesting thing to think about now that you mention it, Mr. Andy. Uh, the next question we have here is Gemini 2.5 Pro versus
Hmm.
localhost LLM. Which investment and experimental cost effectively as developer? Right. So
Ah,
basically, what I would say, Mr. Randy, is what we're asking is Gemini 2.5 Pro. We have, like you mentioned, we have huge context window, right? We have
hmm.
all of this stuff, and you showed us just a part of what's possible with that. And then how do we compare that to the cheapest, say, local host that we can get? Let's say,
Very
yeah.
interesting. So back to the candid conversation that we had previously, using memory.
Hmm.
So we see that when we are talking about local host LLM, in the end, it depends on what is the end in your mind. Is it deploying what you're experimenting, or it's just playing around, right? If you are playing around, it's more widely common for you to use API instead of using hosted LLM, right? So if you are an industry, a company that would like to adopt AI, and you would like to kind of like just plug and play, finding a good use case, like get running, then it's a lot faster to use API. So if you learn an API based LLM, then it will serve you well, because many people will do that. But for a local host LLM, if you would like to productionize this, it requires more expertise. At least you need to choose the best AI infrastructure for your LLM. So I don't know if you ever heard about it. DeepSeek is very hard for production.
Mm.
So DeepSeek is slow. Many people talk about that. It randomly output Mandarin words with Mandarin characters out of nowhere. So it's very hard to kind of like control. But some companies actually successfully made an AI infrastructure that hosts DeepSeek well. So at least you need to know what are those companies and okay, what are the prices? Is it priced by token? Is it priced by machines, etc., etc. So that's the second option, and the third option is to host LLM by yourself. So out of the complexity of the implementation, hosting your own LLM is actually the last resort, and it happens when you go into certain scale. Because when you are going into certain scale, then having the LLM using API might be too expensive for you, right? And having this implemented in your own infrastructure will be cheaper. The economic of scales. So basically, if you are starting as a developer, it will be easier for you to use API based LLM. And I don't think you need to use Flash, sorry, Pro, but you can use Flash first. There are a lot cheaper versions of the API based LLM that you can choose. And usually, when we are doing something in the industry, for example, in my company, we start with the cheapest one, and we see whether the usability is actually acceptable. If it is acceptable, then we stop there. So we don't pay for the more expensive one.
Right. Understood. Understood. All right. Very insightful. Then we have just two more questions left, Mr. Randy, from our participants here. Was this summary and window memory applicable to normal Gemini chat without LangChain library, like prompting them to summarize slash use last and chat? Okay.
Right. So it wraps it for you. So basically, Gemini Chat do some kind of like similar implementation in behind, but you don't see it, right? You just feel it's very natural. It's just like to a person. It's just like talking to a person, right? So when you talk with Gemini Chat and you say, "Hey, please do something different with my previous prompt," then it will just works just fine. Just the previous example I had in the slides, right? So I ask it to compare to cameras, and then I ask make a table comparison. I don't have to redo my prompt from the beginning, right? So that's the iterative workflow that we usually have when we actually talking with chatbot, be it Gemini, ChatGPT. They all have something in behind that is similar with what we are talking about tonight.
Understood. Understood. Right. Yeah, because in GPT, Mr. Randy, from what I can see, we can actually access the memories
Hmm.
usually. But in Gemini, even in AI Studio, I haven't really found a way to look at it yet. But it does seem to remember. It does have a context window and a
Right,
large one,
right, right.
as you explained. Yes. The final one: Can LLMs or AI interact with my custom functions to retrieve the latest news when requested? Right.
Right, very interesting question. So I have a different notebook for this one. I can share it to Cyan after the session, probably distribute to the attendees. But yes, the answer is yes. It can interact with custom function to retrieve latest news when requested. Actually, any function, any API call, it can happen. It is called function calling, if I am not mistaken. So basically, you have all the function listed, and then you describe what the function does, and then it will pick from all the list of the tools that it has based on the description, which actually fits the needs most. Like for example, I have two tools. First is about latest news, and the second is weather forecast. And when I ask, "Hey, will it rain today?" then it will pick whether it's the latest news or the weather forecast. And of course, based on that use case, then it will pick the weather forecast, right? But the process of choosing the right function itself becomes a reasoning in itself by the AI. So it uses all the description for each of the function, and it picks the right function, and then it decodes what you ask into parameters, and then it passes the parameter into the function, right? And if it doesn't have if it doesn't have the enough context or parameter for the custom function call, then it will ask you more questions. Like for example, I ask, "Hey, how's the weather?" And then it asks, "Is it for today or tomorrow?" Right? So because it doesn't know what weather that I'm talking about, is it like for today, like for tomorrow, right? So it asks more questions, and it will stop until the parameter is being fulfilled, and then call the functions. Right? So it's very interesting, and it's actually I have a very lengthy talk about this because as I said, in 2 or probably 3, 5 years from now, the interface of the apps might be totally different from what we see today. So if you see, like, I'm coming from, so for example, my previous company is Traveloka.com. Traveloka is you can book flight tickets there, right? And you put, for example, for ticket, you put what date, how many person, how many passengers, from where city to which city, right? But probably in 5 years from now, it's just a mic there, and then you click the mic, and then you just talk, right? Hey, please book for me a flight from Jakarta to Penang, right? For example, for tomorrow, I will be there for 7 days. Please pick the cheapest one. I don't care. I don't have any baggage, and then it will just pick the right booking for you, and then you just pick from the short list which is found the cheapest one, and then it will be booked, right? So and everything is built on top of that custom function call. Right, so it's very interesting question, and I can share more about it to Cheyenne probably.
Thank you so much, Mr. Randy. Just one final question from me personally.
Hmm.
This is going to tie back to what we talked about just now, whereby we were talking about how to stay ahead of these agents that are increasingly getting better day by day as we speak. Many students in MMU, we have computer science and we have data science, game development, cybersecurity. We have all these majors, right? And
Hmm.
data science right now is where we have most students, from what I can see. And I see AI. I see that this is partly AI driven. And so most people that are now in data science, they look at these news, like you said, Diary of CEO. We have a lot of, if we're in tech news at all, we see day by day, we're like, are we cooked? Like, is it done for developers? Like, are we going to be jobless and whatnot? And so from you as a developer who has like a decade of experience and still is on that journey, what would you say to aspiring developers in the field right now who are learning, who are in university like us?
Right. So I would like to mention one book written by James Hofheit, which is founder of LinkedIn. The book is called Super Agency, right? So this book is talking about how actually the quote unquote future worker will be, right? Because the future worker will be like a lot more having like superpower in a sense, superpower, because there are a lot of things that can be done by the AI itself. But it doesn't mean the job itself will kind of like diminished, right? So it will become in some sense become a more high level. So let me tell you a story about me in data engineering. So most of my history of works is actually coming from data engineering, and it's very different from the Hadoop age. Hadoop age is about 2015-ish, right? And data warehouse age is 2020-ish. So switching from Hadoop, Hive, Presto at the time, going into like BigQuery, Snowflake, it's very different. It's totally different, and it's a lot simpler, right? So previously, I have around 20 data engineers at Traveloka, which is quite a lot, right? Which is quite a lot. But now in my current company, I only have one part-time data engineer. But that doesn't mean the data engineers itself is kind of like diminished. No, they are doing machine learning. They are doing a lot of different things. So I've checked my pals in the LinkedIn, which previously worked for Traveloka. They are all in higher level problems. So my message to you is to kind of like learn how to utilize this AI. Learn using AI, because if you learn using AI, it will be a lot faster, right? uh, at my age, in like 10, 15 years ago, when I am having difficulties with my course, I can just like scratch my head and then I don't know what to do. But now you can ask the I don't understand about this. Can you explain? Right. So please utilize those in order to like deepen your understanding, and also use AI as your kind of like companion to kind of like boost your productivity. Um, with that in mind, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. And this is actually a bigger question for me is how to prepare my kids. It's even longer time frame, right? Compared to you, like probably 3 years from now, 2 years from now, going out from the college, how to prepare my kids. And when I kind of like pondering this question, the answer is, hey, my kids needs to know how to answer the right, sorry, how to ask the right question, right? So when my kids know how to ask the right question using AI, it will be all answered and they will be a lot smarter. So the world doesn't need clever person, the world needs smart person. So that's I think uh, in some sense will applicable to you guys as well as students.
Thank you so much, Mr. Randy. That was more insightful than I thought it would be. I don't know about the rest of our participants, but I took much more than just what I came with into this talk, and we really, really appreciate you coming. And from coming this conversation, we can have it, for example, with our lecturers, but um, and that's insightful. But also coming from someone that has been in the industry, like you said, for more than a decade, is very, very reassuring and aspiring. And looking at where you are, obviously your position right now, and how much experience you've had, it really is very much inspirational. So thank you for sharing that with us. It's been very, very insightful.
Thank you.
And yeah, our participants, if we have, I'm just going to check with them if we have any more questions. This is the last call, after which we'll just do a short photo taking session. Then we'll close up. Do we have any questions from the chat? Calling once, calling twice. And yep, I suppose that would be all. Well, all right, everyone. So we at the end of our sessions, to since our sessions are online, to commemorate our sessions, what we do is we do like a quick photo taking session. So you guys have all been granted presenter mode, so you can open your cameras. Don't be shy. Open your cameras, and we'll just do a quick photo taking session. We'll take a few photos, and yeah, then we can call it a day, pretty much. All right, all right. Let's take a minute or two to give you guys some time. All right, around 30 more seconds, then we can take the photo. All right, Tanja Chuan, whenever you're ready, we can take the photo.
Sure.
Do count the second. Yep.
Yeah, it's ready for the photo.
Yep.
We'll take in 3, 2, 1.
All right,
Take one more.
yep, we have GDG. We have this logo here. Let's just do that.
Right, 3, 2, one. Thank
All
you, guys.
right. Thank you, Tanyajan. Thank you to our participants as well for coming. We have, I hope you guys took as much as we did, I myself did from this session. Again, Mr. Randy, thank you so much for coming. The insights were very, very useful. And honestly, we needed them. We're right now in the final weeks of the trimester. It gets very demotivating. And so this was very much necessary. But guys, remember, this is the first day. Mr. Randy is starting us off with our AI Study Jam Week. We have four more. We have three more sessions tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday. So tune in for that. And yeah, thank you so much for coming. Thank you once again, Mr. Andy. We'll see you guys in a bit. See you guys tomorrow.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.